If you're over 60, what you're about to hear could make all the difference in your life. Most people think of a stroke as something that hits without warning. One moment you're fine, the next your speech is slurred, your balance is off, or you don't know where you are. But after decades as a neurologist, I've seen the truth play out again and again. Stroke rarely comes out of nowhere. More often, it builds slowly, silently, over time through daily habits that seem harmless. One of the most common and overlooked causes is something found in nearly every home: vitamins. The same pills you take to support your heart, boost your memory, or fight fatigue could be quietly working against your brain, your blood pressure, and your circulation, especially when taken in the wrong combinations at the wrong time of day or in doses that don't match your body's current needs. I've treated far too many older adults who believed they were doing everything right, only to end up with brain bleeds, memory decline, or sudden weakness caused by supplements they trusted. In this video, I'll walk you through 5 vitamins that may quietly raise your stroke risk and how to protect your brain moving forward. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. 1. Calcium plus vitamin D overload. The hidden stroke risk from hardened arteries. It's a conversation I've had far too many times in my years of practice. One that begins with confusion and ends with heartbreak. I remember Mrs. Carolyn James, a 69-year-old grandmother from Iowa, who walked into my clinic one morning complaining of persistent headaches, a foggy memory, and blood pressure readings that were unusually high for her. She'd never smoked, stayed active with daily walks, and had always been mindful about her food choices. She believed she was doing everything right, but the results from her CT scan told a different story. Her arteries, especially those leading to her brain, were heavily calcified, hardened, narrowed, and struggling to deliver adequate blood flow. The vessels that once flexed and carried life-giving blood had become stiff and brittle. The question was why? The answer was sitting in her kitchen cabinet. Carolyn had been taking 1,200 milligrams of calcium and 2,000 IU of vitamin D every day for more than a decade. Like many seniors, she'd heard it was the best way to keep bones strong and prevent fractures. Commercials, magazine articles, even conversations with friends all reinforced the same message: more calcium, more protection. But what she didn't know is that after 60, the body's ability to process excess calcium shifts dramatically. Without proper blood testing or guidance, that extra calcium didn't just go to her bones, it began collecting in the walls of her arteries. And vitamin D, while important, can act as a transporter, helping calcium move into tissues, including the vascular system. In healthy doses, this combination can be helpful. But taken daily in large amounts without any monitoring, it becomes dangerous. When this buildup happens over time, the arteries lose their ability to expand and contract. Blood flow slows. Pressure increases. The brain is especially vulnerable because its smallest vessels are the most sensitive to change. You won't feel the arteries harden. You won't hear the blood struggling to reach vital areas. But the signs eventually show: memory loss, balance issues, even minor strokes that go unnoticed until they add up. Carolyn hadn't had a calcium blood test in over a decade. No one had checked the condition of her arteries. And by the time we found the problem, the damage had already begun. She's managing now with medications and therapy, but her independence has changed. "I thought I was helping myself," she said quietly. "I didn't know I was making things worse." This is the quiet danger of self-managing supplements in later life. What once protected us can now push us into harm if we don't adjust with age. If you're over 60 and taking calcium with vitamin D, ask your doctor to check your blood calcium levels and evaluate your vascular health. Because in this stage of life, more isn't always better, and sometimes more is what opens the door to stroke. And while calcium and D can harden the arteries, there's another vitamin, often hidden in multivitamins, that slowly harms your brain in a different way. Let's talk about vitamin B6 and the subtle damage it can cause to your nerves and circulation over time. 2. High dose of vitamin B6. Nerve damage and brain blood flow imbalance. It began quietly, the way these things often do. Mr. Harold Jenkins, a 76-year-old retired machinist from Kansas, came into my clinic complaining that something felt off. He wasn't in pain. He wasn't forgetting names. But he said his balance had changed. His hands felt dull. His feet tingled sometimes when he sat too long. I just feel disconnected, he told me. Harold hadn't had a stroke. He had no diabetes. His blood pressure was steady, but when I tested his reflexes, they were sluggish. His coordination was impaired. His memory, though intact, was showing early signs of slowing. We ran a full neurological workup, and what we found surprised him. His vitamin B6 levels were several times higher than the safe upper limit. Harold had been taking a senior multivitamin every morning, and a B-complex capsule in the afternoon, something his neighbors swore by for energy and brain clarity. No one told him that the combination gave him nearly 250 milligrams of B6 a day, more than 12 times what his body needed. Vitamin B6 is often seen as harmless. It's water-soluble, so people assume the body flushes out any extra. But in older adults, that assumption can be dangerous. As kidney function naturally declines with age, your body becomes less efficient at removing excess nutrients. Over time, high levels of B6 can accumulate in your system, irritating the protective sheaths around your nerves and altering blood flow to the brain. That leads to inflammation in the peripheral nervous system, changes in coordination, numbness, and eventually disruption of small vessel circulation in the brain itself. All of these can raise stroke risk, sometimes without a single warning sign. In Harold's case, we stopped the supplements immediately, but the damage had already taken root. His balance never fully returned. He stopped mowing his lawn. He stopped driving at night. He needed help getting in and out of the tub. I thought I was doing something good for my brain, he said softly, staring at the bottle he brought into my office. No one told me it could hurt me. That's the tragedy I've seen far too often. Not reckless decisions, but good intentions layered on top of misinformation. Many seniors trust that if a little is good, more must be better. But the aging brain doesn't work that way. It needs precision, not overload. If you're over 60 and taking a B complex or a supplement with high-dose B6, especially over 100 milligrams per day, it's time to pause and reevaluate. That tingling in your fingers, the unsteady step, the strange fog in the morning, it may not be age, it may be a vitamin silently working against you. And if B6 can trigger nerve damage without you even realizing it, just wait until you learn how one popular vitamin marketed for heart health can quietly push your blood pressure into the danger zone. Let's take a closer look at niacin next. 3. Niacin, vitamin B3, can spike blood sugar and blood pressure if overused. Just a few months ago, I met Mr. Russell Dean, a 70-year-old retired fire chief from New Mexico. He came in for a routine checkup but looked pale and unsettled. "Doc," he said, "I've been waking up with these pounding headaches. My blood sugar's bouncing around. I eat clean, I walk every day, and I even started taking niacin to help with my cholesterol." That last line stopped me. I asked him how much he was taking. His ANSI 1,000 reals milligrams daily. Flush-free, over-the-counter. No prescription, no lab work, just something he picked up after a friend mentioned it, and a blog post convinced him it was heart smart. He wasn't on a statin, and no doctor had told him to take it. He thought he was doing something good for his heart. What he didn't realize was that he was slowly putting his brain in danger. Niacin, or vitamin B3, is sometimes prescribed in high doses under strict medical supervision to help manage cholesterol, but that doesn't make it safe for everyone, especially not for older adults. When taken in large quantities without guidance, niacin stops acting like a vitamin. It becomes a drug in one with real risks. High-dose niacin can suddenly widen blood vessels, causing fluctuations in blood pressure. It can raise blood sugar levels, inflame the liver, and irritate the small sensitive blood vessels in the brain. And when you're in your 60s or 70s, with arteries that may already be stiff or narrowed, that can quietly lead to a perfect storm. Mini strokes? Blurred vision? Confusion? That's exactly what was happening to Russell. He had no idea the niacin was behind it. He didn't associate the fogginess, the surges in glucose, the heaviness in his head with a supplement that claimed to support his heart. He's not alone. Many older adults assume if it says vitamin, it must be safe. But niacin, in large doses, is no longer nutritional support. It's pharmacological intervention. It alters how your metabolism works, how your brain handles blood flow, and how your vessels respond under pressure. We stopped the supplement immediately. Within 2 weeks, his blood pressure came down, his glucose readings evened out, but the headaches and fogginess didn't vanish right away. Some of the damage had already been done. I just wanted to do something right, he told me. I didn't know I was doing harm. That's the terrifying truth about over-the-counter supplements taken without medical direction. It's not always the big decisions that cause problems. Sometimes it's the small daily habits, the quiet ones, that add up to something dangerous. If you're taking more than 100 milligrams of niacin each day, especially with conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, or any kind of cardiovascular history, it's time to reassess. What starts out as prevention can quietly turn into a trigger for stroke. And niacin isn't the only one. Another vitamin, perhaps even more trusted, is quietly harming more seniors than we realize. Vitamin U, often praised for its antioxidant power scan, thin the blood so effectively in high doses that it leaves your brain exposed to bleeds you'll never feel coming until it's too late. Let's talk about that next. 4. High-dose vitamin E, a silent risk for brain bleeds. One case that stayed with me for years was Mr. Harold Green, a 72-year-old retired high school principal from Indiana. He was independent, well-read, and committed to staying healthy. He came into my clinic shaken and disoriented after suddenly losing vision in his right eye and feeling numbness in his arm. He hadn't fallen. His blood pressure was normal. But the scan told another story. Small, hemorrhagic stroke. A bleed deep within the brain. We searched for answers. His blood work was clean, no major red flags. But as we sat together reviewing his daily habits, he mentioned something that stopped me cold. I take 800 IU of vitamin E every morning. They say it's good for aging, so I've done it for years. And just like that, the picture became clear. Vitamin E, especially in doses above 400 IU, acts as a natural blood thinner. It interferes with platelet activity, the very cells that help your blood clot. And when you're older, with vessels that are already fragile from years of wear, this can create a dangerous imbalance. Add in common medications like low-dose aspirin, fish oil, or even herbal supplements, and you're left with blood that's too thin, too unstable. That's exactly what happened to Harold. His brain bleed wasn't caused by trauma or a spike in blood pressure. It was the result of long-term overuse of a well-intentioned supplement, quietly weakening his brain's ability to protect itself. The saddest part? He thought he was doing the right thing. Something to stay sharp. Something to live longer. Instead, it nearly took his ability to speak, move, and care for himself. Many older adults fall into this same trap. They read a label, hear a recommendation, and assume more is better. But with vitamin E, more can mean irreversible harm. What makes it even more tragic is that most seniors don't actually need additional vitamin E. A diet with leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and healthy oils provides more than enough. But marketing doesn't mention bleeding risks, or the way this vitamin interacts with aging vessels and medications. Harold now walks with assistance. He's regaining some strength, but the damage is done. "Doc," he told me, "I thought I was playing it safe. I never imagined a vitamin could do this to me." If you're taking more than 400 IU of vitamin E each day, especially if you're also on a blood thinner, it's time to step back and reassess. That supplement may not be supporting your health. It may be silently putting you at risk for a life-altering bleed. And here's what's even more sobering. While high-dose vitamin E can make your blood too thin to protect your brain, the next mistake can have the opposite effect. It can cause your blood to clot too easily. Vitamin K, when used the wrong way, interacts dangerously with medications like warfarin, And that silent clash could be building toward a brain event you never saw coming. Let's take a closer look. 5. Uncontrolled vitamin K supplementation. A dangerous mix with blood thinners. Mrs. Lorraine Fields, a 76-year-old retired music teacher from Iowa, was rushed to the emergency room one quiet morning after slurring her words and collapsing in the kitchen. Her husband stood by her side, shaken and confused. Lorraine had no history of high blood pressure. She exercised daily, cooked from scratch, and followed every bit of heart-healthy advice she'd ever read. She had been on a low dose of warfarin for mild atrial fibrillation, closely monitored and well managed. But now, she couldn't move her right arm, and her speech had vanished. When we ran her labs, the answer revealed itself. Her INR, the critical measure of how thin her blood should be, had plummeted. Instead of staying in the safe therapeutic range, her blood had thickened. A clot had formed and made its way to her brain. The cause wasn't a missed medication or a dietary lapse. It was a new supplement, vitamin K2. Lorraine had added it to her routine just 2 months earlier after reading that it was good for her bones and helped with artery health. But she hadn't mentioned it to her cardiologist or pharmacist. Why would she? It was a vitamin natural safe, no warning label. But what she didn't realize, and what many older adults don't know, is that vitamin K directly influences blood clotting. It reduces the effectiveness of blood thinners like warfarin, often without any symptoms or early signs. Inside Lorraine's body, there was a silent tug of war. Her medication was trying to prevent clots. The vitamin was encouraging them. The result was a strokia moment that changed everything. This kind of outcome is not rare. I've seen it before and I will see it again. Because the truth is, even small shifts in vitamin K intake, whether from supplements or sudden dietary changes, can disrupt the delicate balance that keeps blood flowing safely in seniors on anticoagulants. You won't feel it happening. You won't hear your blood thickening or your brain starving for oxygen. You'll only know when something goes wrong, when your hand won't move or your speech disappears. Lorraine now requires daily therapy and part-time assistance at home. She told me softly during a rehab visit. It wasn't the stroke that broke Might, was not asking one simple question. Her words stayed with me. Vitamin K is not the enemy. We need it from natural foods like leafy greens. But taking it as a supplement, especially when you're on any kind of blood thinner, requires precision, oversight, and medical partnership. This isn't about fear, it's about prevention through knowledge. If you're managing a heart condition and thinking of adding any supplement, especially vitamin K, don't do it silently. Have the conversation. Your brain depends on consistency. And now that we've seen how even the most natural vitamins can become dangerous when used incorrectly, it's time to look at what actually works. Let's explore the vitamins that support your aging brain and circulatory system, gently and safely rooted in science, not speculation. 6. So which vitamin should you take instead? After all the warnings about vitamin E causing brain bleeds, calcium stiffening arteries, B6 damaging nerves, and vitamin K interfering with clotting, many of my older patients look at me and say, "So what's left? If everything's a risk, what can I actually take for my brain?" It's a fair question, and it deserves a careful, science-based answer. Because doing nothing isn't the solution either. As we age, our ability to absorb nutrients declines. Our bodies don't repair as quickly. Inflammation builds, circulation weakens, and the brain becomes more vulnerable. So yes, support is needed, but not in the form of guesswork or hype. The key is not to take more. The key is to take smarter, with purpose, with guidance, and with deep respect for the changes your body has gone through. I think of Mrs. Lorraine McAllister, an 81-year-old widow living just outside Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She was sharp, proud, and fiercely independent. "I just want to stay clear," she told me. "I don't want to end up confused or needing help with everything." She had a small basket filled with pilsum from ads, some from well-meaning neighbors. She brought them in, spread them out on my desk, and asked, "Tell me what actually helps, not what's popular." So we started fresh. We cleared the shelf and focused only on what science supports for the aging brain and circulation. We added a high-quality omega-3, specifically EPA and DHA in a clean triglyceride form, not the giant megadoses that cause trouble. Just enough to reduce vascular inflammation and help preserve memory without raising the risk of bleeding like high-dose vitamin E can. We checked her vitamin D levels and tailored her dose, usually between 800 and 1000 IU daily. Enough to help protect cognition and immune function, but not so much that it pushes calcium into the arteries. Magnesium became part of her evening routine. We used magnesium glycinate for better absorption and fewer digestive issues. It helped her sleep, eased tension in her vessels, and played a quiet role in keeping her blood pressure steady. She also began taking a gentle B complex with methylated B12, no mega B6, just enough to support her nervous system and energy metabolism without flooding her system. Over the next few weeks, Lorraine felt calmer, clearer. Her energy returned in a steady, even way. Her blood pressure stopped bouncing. Most of all, she felt like herself again. Not foggy, not overstimulated, just stable. That's what happens when you choose wisely. When you stop chasing trends and start honoring the real needs of your aging body. Because at this stage of life, more isn't better, smarter is. Throwing vitamins into your routine without understanding their effects is like driving with your headlights off. You may not crash today, but if you keep going blind, eventually you will. And the cost, at this age, is not a sore ankle or a bad night's sleep. It's your independence, your memory, your ability to live the life you've worked so hard to build. So if you're staring at a cabinet filled with bottles you can't quite remember buying, now is the time to pause. Take stock. Ask for help. Your brain doesn't need 10 supplements. It needs a few, chosen with care and taken with full awareness of what your body can actually use. And as we bring this journey to a close, I want to leave you with one final reflection. It's rarely one big thing that changes the course of your health. It's the small daily choices done on autopilot, done without thought, that shape the brain you'll be living with 5 or 10 years from now. Stay with me for one last message. It may be the most important of all. Final word, protecting your brain begins every morning. If you're over 60, there's something you need to hear, and not just once, but every day. Your brain is still worth protecting with care, with intention, with the quiet determination that comes from knowing how much you've lived and how much life is still ahead. After decades of treating stroke, memory decline, and brain-related complications in older adults, I can tell you with certainty most damage doesn't happen overnight. It builds in silence, in the daily routines, in the habits we believe are harmless, the supplements we pick up without asking, the water we forget to drink, the sleep we skip. The early signs we chalk up to just getting older. But age is not the enemy. It never was. The real risk is ignoring what your body is trying to tell you. Each vitamin we've discussed, whether it's too much vitamin E, excessive calcium, and D, unsafe levels of B, 6 niacin without guidance, or unmonitored vitamin quas, never meant to hurt you. But without awareness, without someone to guide you, they can shift from helpful to harmful. They can harden your arteries. They can confuse your nerves. They can thin your blood too much or clot it too fast. And worst of all, they can take away the one thing you fought your whole life to protect, your independence. The problem is, the damage rarely shows up with sirens or flashing lights. It whispers. A dizzy spell you shrug off. A forgotten name you blame on stress. A stumble you chalk up to old age. Until one day, the stroke comes and everything changes. But here's the truth. You don't need to live in fear. You need to live in knowledge. You don't need to take dozens of pills or chase every health trend. You just need to do the right things. The simple, steady, proven things that match the stage of life you're in now. That means checking your vitamin routine with a professional. It means asking for regular blood work, not guessing based on how you feel. It means understanding that dizziness, fog, tingling, and racing heartbeats aren't random, they're messages. And the sooner you respond to them, the better your chances of staying sharp, steady, and strong. It also means starting each morning with presence. Not rushing into the day, but pausing, drinking water, stretching gently, giving your body a moment to catch up before you ask it to carry you through another day. Because brain protection doesn't begin in the hospital, it begins at home, in the quiet moments, in the ordinary habits no one sees. That's where your future is shaped. So let today be the day you stop guessing. Let this be the moment you choose clarity. You now know the risks that have gone unnoticed. You now know the safer path forward. What you do next could shape your next decade. And you're not in this alone. Thousands of seniors across the country are waking up to these truths, making better choices, and living with more awareness than ever before. You can be one of them. Your brain is still writing your story. Let the next chapter be one of strength, clarity, and control. If anything in this video spoke to you, I'd love to hear about it. Share one takeaway in the comments a habit you'll change, a vitamin you'll review, a step you'll take with more care. Your words might help someone else who's walking this same road. And if you found this content valuable, please comment 1 below. If not, feel free to comment 0. Your feedback helps guide what we share next. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Senior Health 365. Our community is growing every day, and we'd be honored to have you with us. Thank you for watching. And here's to your next chapter clear, steady, and entirely your own.